Hey everybody, and welcome to the weekly scopes from the 18th to the 24th of January 2026. Hi everybody, and welcome to this week's weekly scopes. If you've heard this before, you can skip, but this is just the intro on how I formulate these astrology weekly readings. I use astrology and my intuition to give you advice how you can practically use the knowledge of the stars and the planets and apply them to your life. So my weekly scopes are all based on GMT time and on Vedic Constellational Astrology. So now I'm just going to explain what Vedic Constellational Astrology is and how it differs from Western astrology. So the precession of the equinox is sort of like something that happens in astronomy and astrology, where the Earth's axis undergoes a slow circular motion over 26,000 years, and basically this means that this motion causes a shift in the position of the equinoxes, and also the calculation Vedic and Western astrologies use. So around 2,000 years ago, the tropical and sidereal Vedic astrology signs of astrology were aligned in the same position. So if the sun was in Scorpio in Vedic astrology, it was also in the constellation of Scorpio in Western astrology. But because of the precession of the equinoxes, this has caused a gradual westward sort of like drift of the tropical Western signs. So basically these signs and the Western signs shift 1 degree with every 72 years. So as a result of this ongoing shift, when Western astrology says the sun is in the constellation of Pisces, it's typically in the constellation of Aquarius. Still, this is because the degree, orb and the date for Western and Vedic astrology are 24 degrees, 24 days apart. So in Western astrology, the sun enters the constellation of Pisces around the 19th of February each year, but actually the sun doesn't arrive into the constellation of Pisces until the 13th to the 15th of March each year, and Vedic astrology takes this into account because it's based on the fixed star positions, and Vedic astrologers use sidereal calculations. So as a result, Vedic astrology takes into account the actual positions of the constellations in the sky at any given time, and also considers the precession of the equinox, adjusting for the shift in the position of the equinoxes over time. But in terms of Western astrology follows the tropical zodiac, which is based on the seasons rather than fixed star positions. Western astrologers also do not directly account for the precession of the equinox in their calculations as well, so this results in slightly different calculations and interpretations that are given whether we're using Western astrology or Vedic astrology. So yeah, as I said, Western astrology uses specific dates. So every year, regardless of where the sun actually is at the sky, the sun moves into Pisces around the 19th of February. So yeah, this discrepancy, this misalignment between the tropical zodiac and the actual positions of the constellations has led to a discrepancy between Vedic astrology and Western astrology. So I consider the actual where the sun and the moon are and where Mars and Venus are at any given time, and this is how I formulate these sort of like weekly scopes. So yeah, thanks for listening to this, and let's dive into this week's weekly scope. Okay, so now I'm just going to explain what parallels and contra parallels are in astrology, because I use them in my chart interpretation. So declination in astrology is the measure of how far a celestial body is, such as the sun, whether it's either north or south of the celestial equator. And the celestial equator is an imaginary line in the sky above the Earth's equator, which us astrologers use in our interpretation. So parallels happen when two planets are on the same declination. Either both planets are on the north side side, or either both planets are on the south side, and this alignment increases the influence of the involved planets. So it's similar to a conjunction aspect, as it amplifies their energy, making the effects of the planets more pronounced. Contraparallels, on the other hand, happen when two planets are on the same declination, but one is in the north and one is in the south. So this alignment creates tension, which is similar to an opposition aspect, and it can lead to conflict, challenges and inner struggles between the energies of the planets involved. So contraparallels highlight areas of friction or contrast in our lives, urging us to find balance between the opposing forces at play. When transiting parallels and contraparallels happen, they can sort of like trigger significant events, shifting consciousness and periods of intense growth and transformation. So I look at these aspects closely during chart analysis to understand how planetary energies interact and influence each other during a specific time frame, to pinpoint key periods for personal development, relationship dynamics or career shifts, and other shifts like karmic shifts and stuff like that. Because I just find using contraparallels and parallels gives me more depth in interpretation, so I use them. So contraparallels and parallels in astrology serve as markers for potential challenges or breakthroughs, guiding us towards more self-awareness, love, acceptance, understanding, forgiveness for ourselves and others, and shifts in consciousness and growth. So overall, just a shift in our mindset if we allow for it. So parallels and contraparallels just kind of like provide valuable insights into the complexities and nuances of the astrological interactions between planetary movements. So yeah, that's the end of what contraparallels and parallels are. Okay, so this week is when the mind meets the underworld. So the main aspects that are influencing this week are Mercury parallel Mars, which is the same as conjunction, right? The Sun contraparallel Uranus, which is the same as opposition, and Venus making a conjunction to Pluto, right? So the energy of this week, our thoughts can appear more focused, more sharper this week, maybe too sharp and focused. We could jump to conclusions, overthink, and, make problems for ourselves. So check the facts, speak your mind, yes, and gather, the evidence and all of that, but try not to overanalyze and overfocus as well. Ultimately, this week, because of the Pluto energy, the Venus and the Uranus, right, we've got the Mercury making a parallel to Mars, then we've got the Sun making a contraparallel to Uranus. So all of these things, allow us to have that kind of sharpness that cuts through bullshit, but also cuts through people if you're not careful. So this is why we have to be careful. And by the way, guys, I'm Amani. If you like me and you listen to me, please follow me and subscribe so you can get more astrology content, because I'm starting natal planets soon and we're going to go from Venus to Pluto, then all the way through. I'm doing them in the order that I feel intuitively I want to do them. So I'm starting with Venus because Venus is all about how we love, right? So anyway, when Mercury makes a parallel to Mars, which peaks, highest energy form, tightest connection on Thursday. But we can already be feeling this anyway, but the mental intensity on Thursday going into Friday and Saturday, we can have the need and desire, to say the thing that we've been thinking, the impulse to speak truth, even when truth is brutal. And like I said, if we've been avoiding conflict this week, it's really good, but Uranus can make us act and call people out a bit too much, so just make sure if you're calling people out, you want to blow your house down, it's what you really want to be doing, right? And then we've got the Sun contraparallel to Uranus, he's making this slight kind of and Mercury parallel Mars, like it's firing on all cylinders. So the humming of the sun's contra parallel to Uranus creates an internal tension between who you're supposed to be and who you're actually becoming. This is the week your mind becomes a weapon, and you have to decide what you're using it for. Are you using it to, bring up, dig for the truth, look for the truth, or are you using it to defend yourself? And neither of these positions are wrong, but you just have to be clear on what you are going to use this kind of, the energy of your mind being focused for, right? So you can ask yourself, are you speaking because something needs to be said, or because the pressure inside you needs to go somewhere, because we got Mars is wanting us, we've got Uranus as well, that is pushing us explosive, unexpected words, thoughts, behaviours, reactions, so we can just feel really pressurised. So it's good this week, to do exercise to burn off that extra energy. So ultimately, right, because we've got this pressurized pressure cooker, just like a steam engine, and all that steam has to go out the chimney, right, or what are they called? They're not called chimneys. So let's use a house. So all the steam has to go out the chimney, right? It has to go somewhere. So the line between clarity, good judgment, speaking your truth, and being cruel and a bit evil with your words, is thin this week. And, you can kind of just like walk into it, because Uranus can force us this week, and we've got Mars motivating us to stand our boundaries, but we have to make sure we respect other people's boundaries. It can kind of just like be like reactions, words are going to come out whether you want it or not. And Venus's conjunction to Pluto brings the complication, right? And this is at its peak, it lands on Monday morning, and this is when desire, Venus, meets death, Pluto, and value is meeting its transformation, the part of you that knows what it wants, finally facing the reality of what it costs to want what you want. This isn't a week for, surface, shallow conversations. This isn't a week for pretending everything's fine. This is the week the truth comes out, one way or another, right? The only question is whether you're going to speak it consciously, or whether it's going to explode out because you waited too long. And for you guys, just like the summary, that's it. That's it. See you later. I'm giving you star sign, so you may want to scroll or skip to the end, where I'm going to what it means specifically for all 12 sun, moon and rising signs. But now I'm going to go in depth, layer by layer, kind of, just breaking down the transits, what shadow work you can do, giving you prompts how to ground yourself, the gift of this week's placements, the traps of this week's placement, how to use this week's energy practically, and all that good stuff. Yeah, so if you want all of that, keep listening. If you're one of the guys just like the summary, that was it. So this week's primary transit, the main one is Mercury making a parallel to Mars, and this is exact for the second time, because it was first exact in December on the 23rd of January, and Mars and Mercury are both in Capricorn, right? So parallel means that Mars and Mercury have the same intensity, operating together beneath our awareness. Our intellect, our mind is kind of, combined with our willpower, our assertion, what we want, and our thoughts are merged with action, and we can use our words as weapons. So it's really good because, we can think things and we can follow through. So it's good for following through in the projects. We're in the third week now, are we? Or is it the fourth week of the year? And, we've got New Year's goals and all of that. So this is the energy to start them if you haven't started them, or to continue them, right? So ultimately this week, you're not thinking and then acting. You're thinking, acting, speaking, doing, processing, moving all at once. This is what this energy allows us to do. Mercury in Capricorn wants precision, wants strategy, wants to think it through. Mars in Capricorn wants results, wants to build, wants to cut away what doesn't serve, it wants us to let go of the things that are no good for us, that are toxic for us, including our own toxic thoughts and behaviours, right? And ways of relating to ourselves and others. So Mars and Mercury in Capricorn together means that, we can be ruthlessly, brutally efficient this week. We don't want to waste time and politeness when directness will do. You know, we can say exactly what needs to be said and not apologize for it. And this mental intensity, the sharpness of thought, and the need and the desire to speak directly, that has kind of been living in that astrological atmosphere since before Christmas, because as I said, it was exact for the first time in December, right? And you know, for all of you who are tired of holding your tongue, tired of softening your words to make them more palatable, you know, and people pleasery, can really tap into this energy, you know, because you can be really tired of thinking 3 steps ahead about how your truth will land before you speak it. This week, the filter is wearing thin. Mercury parallel Mars is the aspect of saying what you mean and meaning what you say. It's the energy of clarity without cushion, truth without decoration, directness, you know, without apology. The gift is that you can finally articulate what you've been thinking. You can finally put words to the frustration. You can finally speak the strategy that's been forming in your mind for weeks. The shadow is that you can also excavate, you know, really hurt someone with language and actions. You can use your intelligence as a weapon and other kind of skills and ways, your humor, whatever, sarcasm, and you can mistake brutal for honest and call it growth. So we have to be really careful. Practice active listening, respect other people's boundaries, choose your words carefully. And this doesn't mean, you know, sometimes conflict needs to be had, but just try and make sure you pick your battles wisely, right? Really, this week we can be going in for the kill, but you can do that, but just make sure that, you know, if that's what you're going to do, you're going to you're not going to be scared of the consequences, right? The work of this week is learning how to use your words with focus and precision instead of using them as blunt force. Mercury Mars isn't here to make you mean and evil, you know, it's here to make you clear. Clear doesn't require cruelty. Direct doesn't require destruction and burning your whole house down, although for some of you, you know, you need to do that. But yeah, you can say what needs to be said without leaving casualties, but that requires consciousness. This requires pausing between thought and speech. That requires asking, am I speaking truth, or am I speaking from the part of me that wants to win? Because here's the thing, Mercury parallel Mars doesn't care about winning, it cares about efficiency. And sometimes the most effective thing and efficient thing you can do is to shut up. Sometimes the most powerful move is the one you don't make. Sometimes the truth is better written than spoken, better felt than expressed, better integrated than broadcast, you know, said. This week is asking you to use your mind as a scalpel, you know, be focused, think about you, react and act right, you know, so use your mind as a scalpel, not a sword. You know, if a surgeon's doing surgery on your heart, right, you don't want them to use a sword, you want them to use a scalpel, which is like a mini, well, it's not a mini it's not a mini sword, but it's a mini cutting instrument, right? So they can be more delicate, right? So it's about, you know, using a scalpel approach to cut away that's not serving you, right? Articulate what's need to be said, let go of what you need to let go of, but don't confuse precision with violence. Don't mistake directness for dominance and control. Speak truth, but speak it in service of connection, not conquest. That's the razor edge you're walking this week, you know, and that's really the whole work, you know. It's speaking your mind, yes, but also being delicate, you know. So remember, scalpel this week instead of sword, right? And in fact, maybe the pen, you know, instead of the sword, but anyway. So the second aspect that's influencing us this week is the Sun contra-parallel Uranus, as I said, and this is exact on Thursday, the 23rd of January at 7:21, and the Sun's in Capricorn, Uranus is in Taurus. Remember, I do Vedic astrology, so although, you know, contra-parallel means that the Sun and Uranus are on the opposite sides of the astrological sphere, right? But it's the same intensity, but in opposite directions. So it's identity, which is represented by the Sun, versus disruption, which is represented by Uranus, right? So structure, routine versus breakthrough and who you've been versus who you're becoming, right? So the internal tension between maintaining stability and needing to break free can be really, really wild and at the forefront of all of our attention this week. We may have been feeling this energy for over a week, and it's only going to get louder this week. The Sun in Capricorn wants order, wants structure, routine, good habits to reach your goals, right? Wants to build something that lasts. And Uranus in Taurus says, but what if you're building a cage around you, right? What if the stability you're protecting is actually what's keeping you stuck? The Sun's contra to Uranus is the aspect of the part of you that knows you're supposed to stay the course, fighting for what you want, with the part that knows the course is wrong, right? It's the tension between loyalty to what you've been building, whether it's a relationship, a project, whatever, and honesty about whether it's serving you still. It's the split between identity, the one you've been performing, and the one that's trying to come out to light, the real you, the authentic you. And here's what makes it unbearable this week. Both sides are you, we've all got all the astrological energies in us, right? We've all got a sun sign, a Uranus in a certain sign, Mars in a certain sign, Venus, right? So both sides, all sides of us can be true. Two things can be true, two opposing things as well. So, the Sun and Uranus are pulling us in opposite directions with equal force. The shadow of this aspect is using rebellion as avoidance. It's the version of you that burns it down, not because it needs to be burned, but because staying would require vulnerability. It's the sudden need, desire to quit, to leave, to disrupt, not because disruption is what's called for, but because the discomfort of staying present feels intolerable. It mistakes the impulse to flee for the core to evolve. The gift is recognizing when the structure, routine that you've built has become the prison, and having the courage to dismantle it, to destroy it, not dramatically, not reactively, but consciously. The gift is understanding that evolution, growth sometimes requires breaking your own rules, disappointing people's expectations, and becoming someone that didn't expect you to become, right? The gift is trusting that the part of you that wants to break free isn't trying to destroy you, it's trying to liberate you, to free you. This week, the Sun's contra to Uranus is asking, who are you without the performance, right? Who are you when you're not trying to be who you think you should be? Who are you when the mask comes off and what's underneath is raw, unpolished and unexpected, right? And are you willing to let the version, that version of you, when the mask off, what's raw, unpolished, unexpected and authentic, to be seen, even if it's just being seen by you, right? Even if it means people don't recognize you anymore. If you don't recognize you anymore, the breakthrough comes when you stop defending the version of yourself that's familiar and start trusting the version that's emerging, that's trying to come out, right? When you stop trying to fit into the box you've outgrown and start building something new, when you let yourself be surprised by who you are becoming instead of being terrified by it, right? That's the invitation, that's the edge, that's where your freedom lives. So the gift and the trap of this week is that we can confuse being direct with cruelty. We can confuse revolution with destruction, truth with brutality. Mercury's parallel to Mars gives you the words. Sun's contra parallel to Uranus gives you the impulse to break free. And if you're not conscious, you will use both to blow everything up and call it honesty. You will say the cutting thing and justify it as authenticity. You will disrupt, because disruption feels powerful, not because it's what's actually needed. The trap is mistaking the change, and the electricity, even the charge, for clarity, and the need and the desire that you can have to act impulsively instead of out of wisdom about the action to take, using judgment, taking time out to think rather than just rushing into conflict. But remember, intensity isn't truth. Impulse, reactive behavior and thoughts are not insights. And just because you can say something doesn't mean you should. The trap is weaponizing your intelligence, using your words to dominate instead of communicate, breaking things because staying present feels too vulnerable. It's burning the bridge because walking across it and choosing to leave on your own terms feels too slow, too deliberate, and too much like you might have to feel something on the way out, right? The gift is the same energy but conscious. It's using Mercury Mars to articulate what needs to be said with precision and care. It's using the Sun Uranus to break free from what's not serving without needing to destroy it first. The gift is understanding that you can be direct without being cruel, revolutionary without being reactive, and honest without being harsh and a bit evil-ish, and cruel. The gift is learning that real power doesn't announce itself through volume, it moves through clarity. The choice point this week is in the pause. Before you speak, before you act, before you disrupt, pause. Feel the charge in your body. Ask yourself, is this clarity or is this just pressure looking for an exit, right? Am I speaking because something needs to be said or because I need to say something? Am I breaking free or am I just running? The answer will tell you everything you need to know, because here's the truth. This week has the potential for breakthrough or breakdown, and the difference is consciousness. Conscious, being aware, conscious disruption, conscious awareness is evolution, that's growth. Unconscious disruption, just being impulsive, right, it's just chaos. Conscious truth telling is connection, it builds relationships, right. Unconscious truth telling is violence. You have the power this week, to choose. The question is, what are you going to choose, right? What are you going to use the power that this week, the Mars energy, the Uranus and Sun energy is giving us, right? The Venus conjunct energy is giving us. In terms of shadow work, the psychological meaning, the mind trap, right, this week is the belief that if you're smart enough, direct enough, strategic enough, you can think your way out of feeling. It's the voice that says, I don't need to process this emotionally. I can just analyze it, understand it, explain it and move on. It's the part of you that uses intellect as a shield, as protection, words as armor, strategy as a substitute for vulnerability. Mercury's parallel to Mars makes this trap seductive this week because your mind feels so sharp, so clear, so capable, right? Why feel warm when you can think? Why be vulnerable when you can be strategic? This isn't a flaw, this is a survival mechanism. Somewhere in your past, maybe childhood, maybe your first heartbreak, maybe a moment when emotional expression got you punished, you learned that thinking was safer than feeling, that if you could just stay in your head, you wouldn't have to be in your body, that if you could analyze the problem, you wouldn't have to feel the pain. So your nervous system learned intellect equals protection, analysis equals safety, and now even when the situation calls for feeling, your default is thinking. The thought, if I just thought about this clearly enough, I won't have to feel, is the trap. The truth is, you can understand something completely and still need to grieve it. You can articulate a problem perfectly and still need to sit with the discomfort of not having a solution. You can be brilliant and still be human, and being human means feeling things your mind can't fix, right? This week is asking you to notice when you're using your intellect to avoid emotions, when you're analysing instead of grieving, when you're strategizing instead of resting, when you're explaining instead of just saying, this hurts and I don't know what to do about it, right? The work isn't to stop thinking, the work is to let thinking be one tool, not the only tool, right? To let your mind serve your heart, not to replace it. So in terms of, the bloodline baggage this week. We're looking at the ancestral pattern that's being activated this week is the belief that intelligence is the only acceptable form of power. This isn't just your story. This can be, your bloodline story. I mean, it's humanity's story, right? We're all part of humanity. Somewhere back in our family lineage, someone learned that emotional expression was dangerous, that vulnerability got you hurt, that the people who survived were the ones who stayed focused, sharp on the ball. You can't pull anything across me. I know, I'm onto you. I know what you're doing, sort of thing. The people that stayed strategic, stayed in their heads. Maybe it was a grandparent who lived through war and learned that feeling was a luxury they couldn't afford. Maybe it was a parent who was punished for crying and taught you through their silence that emotions are weaknesses. Maybe it was a culture that valued intellect over feeling, that rewarded the articulate, the intellect, right, and dismissed the emotional. Whatever the origin, the message was clear. Don't feel, analyse, don't express, be smart, don't be soft, and that pattern got passed down generation after generation until it landed in you. And now you're standing here with Mercury, parallel Mars this week, where our minds can be sharp as a blade and focus, our words can be precise, but underneath all of it, a river of feeling and emotions that we've never been taught how to navigate and deal with, right? This week is a chance to be the one who breaks the cycle or start doing the work, continuing the work, right? Not by rejecting your intelligence, that's yours, that's real, that's powerful, but by recognizing that intelligence without emotional intelligence and literacy is incomplete. That being smart doesn't mean you're not allowed to hurt. That articulating a problem doesn't mean you solved it, right? That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is say, I don't have this figured out and I'm scared and I need help. The work isn't just for you, it's for everyone who came before you, who were afraid to feel, who used their minds to survive when their hearts couldn't, who passed down the belief that vulnerability equals death. And it's for everyone who comes after you, who deserves to inherit a different model, a different way of being, one where intelligence and emotions aren't enemies, where being smart and being soft can coexist and live together, where thinking and feeling are both forms of knowing, right? Where you don't have to choose between thinking and feeling, you can work with them, combine them and use them in unison, right? You get to be the one who shows them that yes, your mind is sharp, being logical is good, yes, your words are powerful, but your heart is strong too, and the strongest thing you can do is let both be true and feel and think on the same level, right? Knowing which one to use when and in what sort of percentages and all of that. So in terms of the spiritual meaning, the higher purpose this week, ultimately the spiritual lesson is about understanding that the mind is a beautiful servant but a terrible master. Mercury's parallel to Mars is teaching you that intelligence is a gift. Words are power, strategy is useful, but none of them are substitutes for presence. None of them are replacements for feeling. None of them are shortcuts around the work of being human. Your soul didn't incarnate to perfect the art of analysis. It came here to experience, to feel, to be transformed by the full spectrum of what it means to be alive. And some of that spectrum can't be taught or thought or, intellectualized. It has to be felt to feel, you have to feel it. Some wisdom doesn't come through the mind, it comes through the body, through the heart, through the places that can't be articulated but can only be experienced. This isn't a test, this is integration. The discomfort you can feel from hearing this, the tension between the sharp mind and the tender heart, between the need, the desire to speak and the need to be silent, between thinking and feeling, isn't evidence that something's wrong. It's evidence that you're finally ready to bring all of yourself online, not just the smart part but all of it. The higher purpose of this week is to learn that true power comes from integration, not domination. Not using your mind to control your emotions, but letting your mind and emotions inform each other. Not choosing between thinking and feeling, but recognizing that both are necessary, both are sacred, both are part of how you navigate, deal with this world. The sun's contrapower to Uranus is asking, who would you be if you let yourself be all of you? Not just the smart version, not just the strategic version, right? but the version that thinks and feels, the version that's articulated and emotional, the version that's sharp and soft. What if the integration, you know, that wholeness is what you've been searching for all along, right? And that what you need is within and not without, right? This week, the invitation isn't to stop thinking, it's to let your thinking be in service of your being, not a replacement for it, to use your words to connect, not to control yourself or others, to let your intelligence light the path, you know, and let your heart choose the direction. That's the work, that's the integration, that's how you become whole, right? So now I'm just going to break down the best days this week. So as I said earlier, this week starts intensely, building towards Thursday's peak, right? Then begins to ease as we go into the weekend and we can integrate this week's energy. So the 18th of January, Mercury makes a conjunction to Mars. There's a new moon in Capricorn, which plants seeds for what we're building. You've got a lot of Capricorn energy this week. So Sunday, the 18th of January is our strategic planning day. Not one to act, but to clarify, organise and for us to prepare, right? On the 19th of January, Mercury makes a sextile to Saturn. Mercury also makes a trine to Uranus, and Mercury's contra parallel to Jupiter is exact at 9:15 p.m. And the Sun makes a sextile to Neptune. So this is one of the best days of the week because Mercury gets support from Saturn, which brings us structure, and Uranus that brings us innovation and new ideas, also disruptions. And the sextile to Neptune brings creative flow. If you need to write, strategize or plan something important, do it today. Your mind is sharp but not harsh, right? On the 20th of January, Venus makes a conjunction to Pluto, Saturn sextiles Uranus, Mars makes a trine to Uranus, and Mars makes a sextile to Saturn as well. So this is a massive day. Venus, Pluto transforms what we value, so it's good to do that, you know, question yourself on what you believe in, and it's what you believe, you know, what you actually believe in or what you've been told to believe. Mars gets support from both Saturn and Uranus, so grounded action meets innovative breakthrough, and Saturn Uranus energy brings structure and routine to our goals, to our plans to change and to add newness into our life. This is the day for, you know, courageous, bold, brave moves that are also strategic. If you're going to make a power move this week, you know, today is the 20th of January. On the 21st of January, the Sun makes a conjunction to Mercury. So the Sun, you know, puts a spotlight, illuminates our thoughts. What's been forming in our mind becomes visible. It's a good day for important conversations, for speaking your truth clearly, for being seen and heard, but also remember to respect other people's boundaries, right? On the 22nd of January, Mercury's conjunction to Pluto is exact at 5:15 p.m. so our words can have weight. On the 22nd of January, we can have deep conversations, so, you know, a nice few days where we can go deep, right? Psychological insight can come up. This is a day for therapy, for shadow work, for personal development, right? For self-love and nurturing and relaxation, for saying the thing that needs to be said, right, that needs to be excavated and brought up. Don't use this energy, you know, sort of like casually, because it cuts deep, so it's good for going deep, right? On the 23rd of January, Mars makes a sextile to Neptune. The Sun's contra parallel to Uranus is at its peak at 7:22. The Sun's conjunction to Pluto is at its peak at 10:29 a.m. Mercury's parallel to Mars peaks today at 11:29, and Venus's contra parallel to Uranus peaks at 10:52. So this is a peak intensity day for a lot of this week's main aspects, right? Everything, you know, converges, combines. The Sun Pluto brings power, Mercury Mars brings, you know, focus, words and action, and the Sun's contra parallel to Uranus brings internal tension. This is not the day to react, this is the day to witness the intensity, feel it fully and respond consciously. If you make it through today without burning anything down, you've done the work, right? On the 24th of January, this is a quiet day. The moon void, of course, starts for most of the evening. So this can be a day of rest, right? Let Thursday integrate. Don't push, don't force. Just breathe, and use these rhythms to support you this week, these best days. The week, builds up slowly towards Thursday when everything kind of like can erupt as well. So, spend Sunday to Wednesday preparing, and then Thursday onwards it's about integrating everything that you say, do or want, right? Make sure you pace yourself accordingly. Do not rush this week, right? So now I'm going to talk about the actual work, right, from theory to practice. So this week's practice is about creating space between thought and speech. The goal isn't to, suppress, bottle up what you're thinking. It's to make sure that what comes out of your mouth is what you actually mean to say, not just the first, harsh thing your mind generates. So step one, notice the thought. When the sharp thought arrives, the cutting observation, the strategic criticism, the thing that would land like a blade, like a sword, like I said, this week is scalpel week, right? We want to be delicate, right? We don't want the surgeon to go into our body with a sword. We want the scalpel. We want the most delicate instrument. Sometimes we just want keyhole surgery. Sometimes we have to open up fully, right? So, when the thought arrives, that sharp, nasty thought, just notice it. Don't judge it. Don't act on it. Just acknowledge that's a harsh thought, right? Then step two, feel where it lives in your body. Is it your throat, your chest, your jaw? Where does this harsh word, thoughts, intrusive thoughts, whatever, live physically? And that's important information. The location tells you whether it's truth that needs to be spoken or just tension that needs to be moved. So step three, ask what's underneath this. Is the sharp thought true, or is it just efficient? Is it kind, or is it just clever? Will saying this create connection or just prove that I'm right? The answer matters, right? Step four, choose your response. If the thought is true and kind and necessary, speak it. If it's just true, consider whether the kindness matters here. If it's just clever, maybe keep it to yourself. Not every thought needs to be said. Sometimes the most powerful thing your mind can do is edit itself, right? Practice the pause between the thought and the speech. Create 3 seconds of space. 3 seconds, that's it. Not 3 minutes, not 3 hours, just 3 seconds to check, is this what I actually want to say? 3 seconds can save you from, the cleanup after you say horrible things that you can't take back, or do horrible things that you can't take back, that can take 3 months or more to clean up, right? So step 6, review the end of the day. What did you say that you're proud of? What did you say that you wish you could take back? What harsh, sharp thought did you successfully pause on? What harsh thought, did you speak and regret? This isn't about saying, it's about learning your patterns. You can't change, sift what you can't see. This practice can feel awkward at first. Your mind can be faster this week because of the Mercury-Mars parallel that wants to speak and react immediately, but this week the work is creating just enough space to be conscious, to question what you say and do. That's it. That's the practice, right? So ultimately, the vibe check, aka the proof in the pudding this week, is that you will know that the work is working this week when you notice these changes. You catch yourself before you say something, cut in and pause long enough to decide if it needs to be said. You can think something sharp and harsh without immediately needing to speak it. There's space between thought and action. You notice when you're using your intellect to avoid your emotions, and you course correct, such as I'm analysing this because I don't want to feel it, and then be like, okay, let me feel it. You speak directly without being brutal. Clarity without cruelty becomes possible. You can sit with uncomfortable feelings without immediately trying to think your way out of them. Someone says something that would normally trigger a sharp response, and instead you just breathe and respond consciously, not perfectly, but consciously, right? By choosing your reaction carefully, you start to notice the difference between strategic thinking, which is useful, and mental spinning, which is avoidance. argument and you can interrupt the spin. You repair something you said that landed wrong without saying, without defense. You just, do a clean repair by apologizing or doing what needs to be done. And remember this week that progress is in a straight line. Some moments you will pause before you react. Some moments you'll speak before you think and, need to apologize or, stick with it and accept the consequences, right? What matters is that you're noticing, that you're creating space, that you're learning the difference between your mind as a tool and your mind as a weapon. That's the work. Everything else unfolds from there, right? So now I'm going to give guidance for all the 12th sun and rising signs. So read your rising sign first. That's where the energy lands in your actual chart. But if you know your sun sign and not your rising, read that instead. And if you're extra curious, read both. Sometimes the overlap is where the real work lives, and I recommend reading your sun, moon and rising signs interpretation. So Aries, this week lands in your 10th house and 2nd house, right? And this week the work is all about using that sharpness to advance your goals without alienating the people that you need. Remember, you can be direct without being dismissive. You can be strategic without being cold. The sun's contra Uranus is creating tension between, your professional image that you've built and the person you're actually becoming. This week asks, are you climbing towards something you want or towards something you think will prove your worth? And there's a difference, choose accordingly. Taurus, this week hits your 9th house and 1st house. So Mercury parallel Mars in your 9th house sharpens your beliefs, your worldview, your understanding of truth. The sun contra parallel to Uranus in your 1st house is disrupting your identity. The work this week is recognizing that who you've been and who you're becoming don't have to be enemies. You can evolve without destroying everything you built. You can change your mind without losing your foundation. The sharp words this week might come out as, philosophical debates, but underneath you're fighting for the right to become someone new. Let yourself evolve and grow. That's not betrayal, that's growth. Gemini, this week activates your 8th house and your 12th house. So Mercury parallel Mars in your 8th house digs deep, asks the uncomfortable questions, refuses to stay on the surface. The sun's contra Uranus in your 12th house is operating in the shadows. The work this week is bringing what's unconscious into consciousness without using your intelligence as a weapon against yourself. You're brilliant at articulating what's wrong, but can you articulate, speak and be truthful about what's true without making yourself the problem? This week asks you to be as compassionate with yourself as you are sharp with your analysis. You deserve that. You always did, right? Cancer, this week lands in your 7th house and 11th house, right? So the sun contra parallel to Uranus in your 11th house is disrupting your sense of belonging. The work is, this week is recognizing that you can be honest in relationship without being cruel, and you can need community without losing yourself. The sharp words might come out at your partner or friends or whoever, but underneath you're fighting for the right to be authentic without being abandoned and rejected, right? This week asks, what if the people who truly love you can handle your truth? What if you don't have to choose between honesty and belonging? Leo, this week activates your 6th and 10th house, right? So Mercury's parallel to Mars in your 6th house sharpens your work ethic, your discipline, your critical eye, and the sun's contra parallel to Uranus in your 10th house is disrupting your professional identity. The work this week is recognizing that excellence doesn't require perfection and disruption doesn't require destruction. You can evolve, grow your career without burning down what you've built. You can change direction without calling everything you did before a mistake. The sharp mind this week wants to criticize yourself, your work, your path, but criticism without compassion is just cruelty. Be as kind to yourself as you are demanding, and you will get further this week. Virgo, this week hits your 5th house and your 9th house. So Mercury parallel Mars in your 5th house brings sharp creative vision, strategic self-expression, and the sun's contra parallel to Uranus in your 9th house disrupts your beliefs about what's possible. The work this week is letting your creativity be an expression, not a performance. You're so good at making things perfect, but this week is asking, what if you made something real instead? What if you let yourself create from the messy, imperfect, human place instead of the strategic, controlled one? Your art doesn't need to be perfect to matter. It just needs to be yours, right? Libra, this week lands in your 4th house and your 8th house, right? So Mercury parallel to Mars in your 4th house brings sharp words in family dynamics, relationships, direct conversations about what's not working. The Sun's contra-parallel to Uranus in your 8th house disrupts how you handle shared resources and intimacy. The work this week is recognizing that you can speak your truth at home without destroying the foundation, and you can transform without losing what's essential. The sharp words might come out at family, but underneath you're fighting for the right to be yourself in the place where you learn to perform. This week asks, what if home could be where you're the most real, right? Not where you're the most careful. Scorpio, this week activates your 3rd and 7th houses, right? So Mercury parallel Mars in your 3rd house makes your words surgical, which is needed. Your communication can be precise, but potentially cutting. And the Sun's contra parallel to Uranus in your 7th house disrupts your relationships. So the work this week is using your words to heal, not to dominate. You can see through people, that's your gift, but seeing through isn't the same as dismantling and tearing down. This week asks, can you speak truth without weaponizing it? Can you be honest without being harsh? Your power is real, you know, Scorpio, but the question is, what are you using it for? You know, to build people up, to build yourself up, or to tear you and others down, right? Sagittarius, this week hits your 2nd house and 6th house, right? So Mercury parallel Mars in your 2nd house sharpens your thinking about money, worth and value. The Sun's contra parallel to Uranus in your 6th house disrupts your daily routines and health. The work this week is recognizing that your worth isn't your productivity and your value isn't in what you produce. The sharp mind wants to strategize, to optimize, to figure out how to be more efficient. But this week is asking, what if you're already enough? What if the work isn't to do more, but to be more present for what you're already doing, right? Capricorn, this week lands in your 1st house and 5th houses, right? So Mercury parallel Mars in your 1st house makes you more focused, direct, but potentially cutting, and Sun contra parallel Uranus in your 5th house disrupts how you express yourself creatively. The work this week is recognizing that being direct doesn't require being cold, and evolving doesn't require rejecting who you've been, right? You're so used to being strategic, but this week is asking, what if you let yourself be spontaneous? What if you trusted that you don't have to have it all figured out before you move? Your power is real, but power without play is just pressure. So just try and avoid burnout and try to be in touch with your emotions this week. Capricorn, Aquarius, this week activates your 12th house and 4th house, the unconscious, spirituality and your home and family, right? So Mercury parallel Mars in your 12th house operates beneath awareness, you know, sharpening your inner critic, your shadow work. And the Sun contra parallel to Uranus in your 4th house disrupts your foundation, your daily habits, your home life, right? So the work this week is bringing what's unconscious into consciousness without using your intelligence to punish yourself. You're so good at analysing your patterns, but analysis without compassion is just self-violence. This week asks, can you see yourself clearly and kindly? Can you understand your wounding without making it your identity? And, you know, to remember you're more than your past and your trauma. You always were, right? Pisces, this week hits your 11th and 3rd houses. So Mercury parallel Mars in your 11th house sharpens your thinking about collective dynamics, your role in groups. The Sun's contra parallel to Uranus in your 3rd house disrupts how you communicate. The work this week is recognizing that you can contribute to the collective without losing yourself, and you can communicate your truth without having to soften it so much that it's no longer yours. The sharp mind wants to analyze the group dynamics, but this week is asking you, what do you want? Not what serves everybody else, but what do you want, Pisces? Let yourself want something. Let yourself say it. That's not selfish. That's necessary, right? So ultimately, the integration, the work that works this week, making it real this week is, all about the 3-second rule. Before you say anything that could cut, count to 3. This sounds simple, but it's not. Your mind will rebel, and Mercury Mars energy will make you say, but I need to say this now. Count to 3 anyway. In those 3 seconds, check, is this true, kind and necessary? If it's all 3, speak it. If it's only 1 or 2, reconsider. As I said, it's up to you what you do. As long as you're willing to face your consequences, some of you may need to say the harsh truths. Maybe people have been hiding things from you, or you've been hiding from others, and you want to, dispel, remove the lie and speaking truth. Sometimes that involves conflict. You can also keep a sharp thought journal. So keep a running list this week of every sharp cutting, brilliant but brutal thing you think but don't say. Write them down. Look at them at the end of the week. You'll see patterns. You'll see what your mind does when it's threatened, when it's bored, when it's trying to protect you. That awareness is the beginning of choice. You can also try the repair practice. If you say something and that's like kind of, harsh, and immediately no, you shouldn't have, repair it in the moment if possible, later if necessary, such as, that came out harsher than I meant. What I actually wanted to say was this, and then say it in a better way. And remember that this isn't weakness, this is mastery. Masters clean up their messes. Amateurs pretend they didn't make any. You can also try the thinking feeling check-in. So 3 times a day this week, pause and ask yourself, right now, am I thinking or feeling? If you're thinking, drop into your body. If you're feeling, see if you can articulate it, pull it into words, to yourself, or if necessary to someone else. The practice is integration, not choosing one over the other, but bringing both online. The Mercury Mars release, so you can, when the mental intensity, spikes get too much and you feel like your head's going to explode, move your body, go for a walk, do push-ups, shake, dance. As I said, Mars energy, we can do that sort of exercises this week, yoga, tai chi, whatever, screaming to a pillow. Your mind is processing faster than your body can handle this week because of the Mercury Mars together energy, right? So help your body catch up by moving the energy through. Pick one, do it fully. Don't try to integrate everything. That's just mental overwhelm upon mental overwhelm, making more mental overwhelm, right? Choose one of these practices this week and let it teach you something about the relationship between your mind and your mouth, right? So now I'm just going to give you some grounding practices, because this week can be a lot of energy, Uranus, Mercury, Mars, that can make us feel ungrounded. Our mind can be racing, our words and actions can feel like weapons, so we can try the tactical breath. So when you feel the sharp words rising, before they come out, breathe, inhale for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8 breaths. This psychologically calms the nervous system. Do it twice, then decide if you still need to speak. Often you won't. You can do a cold water reset for you brave ones. It's the middle of winter in the UK, so I'm not sure about this. So if your mind is spinning and you can't get out of your head, splash cold water on your face, hold ice cubes, take a cold shower. This activates your vagus nerves and interrupts the mental spiral. It can work. So, if you feel up for it, use it. You can do feet on the ground meditation, sit, feel your feet on the floor, insides once again, because it's cold in the UK and Europe, but anyway, most places in Europe, but sit, feel your feet on the floor, actually feel them, notice the contact points, say out loud, I'm in my body, my mind is not the whole of me. This brings you out of your head and back into your physical form. You can have a screen fast, so when the mental intensity is too much, put the phone down, close the laptop, no inputs for 30 minutes. Your mind needs space to process what it's already holding. Stop adding more data. Voice it out. If you need to say say the start thing, but you know you shouldn't say it to the person. Say it out loud to yourself, alone, in your car, in the shower. Let your voice speak it without an audience. Sometimes the pressure just needs an exit that won't cause damage. Ground as many times as you need this week, because Mercury parallel to Mars is intense. Your nervous system is working hard. Support it. You're not failing when you need to ground. You're being wise. So now, I'm going to give you some shadow and journaling prompts. I'm going to start with the shadow work prompt, the uncomfortable questions to ask yourself. So you can ask, what am I using my intelligence to avoid feeling? And what would happen if I let myself feel it instead of thinking about it, right? Don't write what sounds evolved. Don't perform emotional awareness and literacy. Let the question land in your body and seize what comes up. Be truthful and, sense the resistance that you feel and the need and desire to analyze the question instead of answering it. And that's the pattern that we need to break, and that's where the work lives this week, in being honest and being brutal. Sometimes we can be afraid of our negative and harsh thoughts, especially if you got a lot of Cancer, Pisces and Libra energy in your chart. It can be hard to feel the darker side of life, but both light and dark exist. We have the daytime, we have the nighttime, we have the summer, we have the winter, right? In terms of journaling prompts, this week's prompts are all about digging up, excavating, thinking about the relationship between your mind and your heart. So you can finish all of these sentences, right? So number 1, the thing I'm most afraid to feel, so I keep thinking about it instead, is. Then, when I use my words as weapons, what I'm actually protecting myself from is, and finish that sentence. If I let myself be as emotionally honest as I am intellectually honest, I would have to admit. The sharp thing I want to say but haven't yet is, and underneath that sharpness, that harshness, what I'm actually feeling is, and finish that sentence, right? And finally, if my heart could speak as clearly as my mind, it would say. And when answering all of these, write without editing. Let it be raw, let it be messy. Let your heart have a voice this week, even if it's just on the page, and that's where the integration begins. So in terms of the final T this week, as I said, our minds can be sharp as weapons, and so can our actions, and we get to choose what we use this week's energy for. Mars and Mercury's parallel gives us the focus, the strategy and the words to cut through the noise, and the sun's contra parallel to Uranus gives us the need and the desire to break free from what's ever controlling us and hurting us, whether it be toxic thoughts or relationships or behaviours, giving us the chance to become someone new or to be more authentic, right? And underneath all of it, Venus conjunct Pluto on Monday reminds you that transformation always costs something. The question is, what are you willing to pay? The sharpness you're feeling isn't the problem, it's the tool, and tools can build or destroy depending on how we use them, right? This week is asking you to use your intelligence consciously, to use your words to connect and not to conquer, to let your mind serve your heart, not replace it, to speak truth without needing it to be brutal. And here's the other T, right? You don't have to choose between being smart and kind this week. You don't have to choose between thinking and feeling. These are false choices, right? You can be sharp and soft, clear and caring, strategic and surrendered. Integration is the work this week, being whole, like I said, being all of you, not just parts of you this week. This week can be intense. This week will test whether you can pause between thought and speech, whether you can feel something without immediately needing to analyze it, whether you can be in your body as much as you're in your mind. And if you can't do it perfectly, which you can't because perfection isn't a point, then the work is about noticing when you slip, repairing what you can and trying again, getting up after each fall, and being loving and forgiving with yourself. It's all about getting back up. The proof is in the pudding, in the change, right? So in terms of mantras, Aries, your mantras this week is: I speak with precision, not cruelty. Directness serves connection. Taurus, I evolve without destroying. Growth is not betrayal. Gemini, I am as compassionate with myself as I am sharp in my analysis. Cancer, I speak my truth without fear of abandonment. I am safe in my honesty. Leo, I am excellent without being perfect. Kindness and standards, coexist, can live together. Virgo, I create from truth, not perfection. My imperfect art still matters. Libra, I speak my truth at home. Authenticity doesn't destroy my foundation, who I am, right? And my, home life and all of that. Scorpio, I use my power to heal, not to dominate. Honesty without harshness. Sagittarius, I am enough beyond my productivity. Worth is in heaven. Capricorn, I am direct without being cold. Power and play are not opposites. Aquarius, I see myself clearly and kindly, understanding without punishment. Pisces, I speak my truth without softening it into invisibility. My voice matters. So, in terms of the astrological flow this week, here it is. Your mind is a blade. It can cut away what's dead or cut through what's alive. The blade doesn't care, you do. This week, choose what you're cutting and use it with care. So ultimately, guys, take care of yourself this week. Ground yourself when the intensity gets too deep and too much. Create space between stimulus and response. Let your words be tools, not weapons. And trust, really trust that you can be brilliant and human. At the same time, you don't have to choose. You can feel and think. Remember that. Okay? Yeah? You can feel and think. Okay? Alright, guys. That's been the weekly scopes from the 18th to the 24th of January. I'm Amani, your holistic astrological life coach, and I will see you next week. Take care.